Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I am incredibly excited for today's episode because here with me I have Ian Rogers, the Chief Experience Officer at Ledger, but really just like a maven of all sorts of business. He was the Chief Digital Officer at LVMH, which is like one of the largest or the largest luxury fashion house, but is also just like one of the largest businesses in the world because they span everything from wine and spirits to fashion to watches and jewelry and et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to talk about that. And digital music. You really helped usher Apple into the streaming era and have been in digital music were in digital music for many, many years. Just incredible, kind of professional experience. So really excited to have you here today, Ian. Thank you so much for joining the pod.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I listen to the show, so it's always cool when you're like, oh wow,
I'm so
they want me.
Incredibly flattered. And as I said here, I want to get into all of this stuff with Ledger that you're doing, what you have coming up, security in this world of crypto, because that is, arguably the most important thing that we all need to be studying, learning, and making sure we're having good like security hygiene. But I also want to dive into your background and, music, what you did with Apple, what you've done with LVMH. Like you just have this wide breadth of experience that I think is fascinating. But before we get into all of that, we do need to hear a word from our lovely, lovely sponsors.
There is a brand new staking feature in the Ledger Live app today. We all like staking the assets that we're bullish on, and now you can stake 7 different coins inside the Ledger Live app. Cosmos, Polkadot, Tron, Algorand, Tezos, Solana, and of course, Ethereum. With Ledger Live, you can take money from your bank account, buy your most bullish crypto asset, and stake that asset to its network, all inside the Ledger Live app. Through a partnership with Figment, Ledger also lets you choose which validator you want to stake your assets with. And Ledger is running its own validating nodes, offering a convenient way to participate in network validation, and it even comes with slashing insurance. Ledger Live is truly becoming the battle station for the bankless world, so go download Ledger Live. If you have a Ledger already, you probably already have it, and get started securely staking your crypto assets. Immutable X is the layer 2 platform for crypto gaming. Immutable offers massive scalability with up to 9,000 transactions per second and instant transaction confirmation. No more gas fees, no more waiting around for your transaction to clear. Immutable's zero knowledge rollup finally unlocks the world of crypto gaming. Immutable X is the only gas-free NFT minting platform with over 26 million NFTs minted, all with zero gas fees. With the power of Immutable, gaming developers don't also need to become smart contract developers, they just need to plug in to Immutable's API and instantly start unlocking the full potential of crypto assets inside of games. This is why world-class companies and projects have decided to deploy on Immutable X, like GameStop, Ember Sword, Planet Quest, Illuvium, TikTok, and many more behind the scenes. So start building your game on Immutable X today at immutable.com.
Okay, Ian, I want to start by just saying okay, you did music for many years. You went into luxury fashion, which I think you joked on one of the podcasts I heard, you're like this skater boy from Indiana. You end up at LVMH, and now you're in crypto security hardware. Tie it together for us. What are the themes that have driven your professional decision-making in your career thus far?
Yeah, it's interesting because they do hang together, and NFTs is actually what comes after the equal sign. Oddly, I feel but most importantly, I'm a curious person. I love music, and I think because it's I always thought I was a music guy, and then I realized I was kind of a culture person, whatever that means. But what I mean by that is I think somehow I've become a student of the way the internet has changed culture, or the way technology has changed culture. And for me, that came because I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and I just liked stuff that wasn't available to me in this small town. The music I liked wasn't on the radio. It wasn't at the local record store. I was a skateboarder, and I remember these times when, I'd watch a skate video and I'd see Steve Caballero wearing a Misfits t-shirt, and then I'd spend 2 years trying to find a Misfits album, right? That was my experience in the 80s growing up, in a world before the internet, and I remember when my stepdad brought home Thrasher magazine, or I think it was actually Transworld Skateboarding that he brought home for the first time. And I just felt like it was like a portal into another world that I didn't know existed, but gave me hope. I was like, holy shit, maybe one day I can get out of this shithole and, and be around people that are like me. And it wasn't until I went to Indiana University until I was on the internet properly at university in 1990, that I met people who like the same music as me, really. And so that's what the internet has always meant for me. It's meant this sort of like escape from mainstream culture and put me into these like niche worlds that meant something to me. And so I've been a record collector since I was 5 years old. And there's got to be the Venn diagram. If you are, into computers, collect records, you pop out as an NFT collector, I think. It's like an easy bake oven. It's like the same thing, like the people that collect vinyl, they're, again, literally my whole life, it only makes sense. It's the same kind of urge that drives you. But it's not just an urge to collect. It's actually an urge to be a part of these cultures and to know that like something, this record that I'm buying today that nobody gives a shit about is going to be something they care about tomorrow in a way. Right. So that to me, there's this through line, but that's what got me into digital music. I started, making music on computers in the early 90s. I was really lucky and got a job at the Indiana University Music Library, where the guy that ran the music library had this vision that music was going to stream to computers. And he asked me if I would build a system where you could search the card catalog and then stream what you find to a workstation in the library. And I was like, well, you're paying me $6.50 an hour. I'm going to build whatever you ask me to build. But as a result, I built the first search and stream system that I'm aware of in the early 90s. And then it was kind of Groundhog Day for me. I started building, there was this new thing called the web. I was the maintainer of the Beastie Boys frequently asked questions list on Usenet, which will mean a lot to some people and absolutely nothing to other people. And I moved that into a website. I ended up dropping out of grad school in 1995 to go on tour with the Beastie Boys and moved to California. There were very few of us. This is why I love the world of NFTs too. I can collect on Tezos and be talking to the artist on Twitter an hour later, but that's what it was like in those days too. There were like 5 of us doing music on the internet, and a couple of us got together, and my friend Rob Lord, who used to run this thing called the Internet Underground Music Archive, had moved on to a little MP3 player called Winamp. And I joined as the first employee at the company that made Winamp. And that was a great, Cinderella story in 1999. We sold that company to AOL. There were only 4 of us. The company had no debt, no equity. It was and when you say Winamp to people today, like when you say Usenet, there's only 2 responses. Either like, what are you talking about? Or, dude, fucking Winamp? Holy shit. That's so I'm really proud to have been a part of these things. Then like through the 2000s, long story short, and bankruptcies and failures aside, we, did Grand Royal Records, the Beastie Boys, did Yahoo Music, because Rob and I started another little company called Media Code that we sold to Dave Goldberg, who was an amazing human being at Yahoo. And then Topspin, which was direct-to-consumer marketing and commerce, ultimately a commercial failure, but very kind of relevant when I went to LVMH and even now in the world of NFTs. And then with Jimmy Iovine, Luke Wood, Trent Reznor, Dr. Dre, built Beats Music, sold that to Apple, built Apple Music. And then I felt like, oh my God, I've done digital music for 20 years and it's here. Like when I started, I can imagine I was building a streaming music product in 1991 and 92. Like nobody cared. Like if I tried to, we were at a party in college and I was like, yeah, like check out my research project, you would go talk to someone else. Yeah. Right. I mean, like this dude is a nerd. But by the time, Tim Cook walks out on stage and it says, "We love music" behind him. Like, wow, I'm super proud. Like 20 years of my life. Maybe this is the last thing I'll ever do. I don't know, but like it feels important to me, at least as a music fan. It felt important, but it also felt like the finish line, not the starting line. I felt like, okay, now what? Like, am I a music executive? Oh shit, like that's a bummer. I didn't ever want it to be that. But it's okay. I'm not saying I'm not complaining. I had a good life, and selling your company to Apple is a great thing to do. But I was, there is, I guess, to answer your question, something in me that wants to be on the frontier. A consumer internet with 6.5 billion smartphones is really boring to me. It's as boring as a shopping mall with a JCPenney at one end and a Montgomery Ward at the other. Where's the action? Where's the new stuff? Where are the pioneers? All of us in America, and I realize this more clearly now that I live in Europe, my ancestors like came to America in the 1600s. Like we like frontiers,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, you got it in your DNA.
Where's the frontier? I liked Usenet a lot more than I liked Facebook, right? So, where is that? Where do I get that feeling? And so I think you find your way in crypto like pretty naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then as somebody who, has been, a holder of Bitcoin and Ethereum since sort of circa 2015, when you start to like not just see NFTs, but feel the world of NFTs, you're collecting, you're a patron of the arts. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to overstate it, but it's a feeling as a person, right? You're like, oh, I'm doing a value exchange with an artist, that I care about. That feels great. It's like buying vinyl on Bandcamp, it feels good. And so anyway, to me, it does hang together to be that kind of like record collector, technologist, frontier person, and I skipped over LVMH, which I think is actually a really important part of the story. I kind of went to LVMH on a flyer. I wanted to get out. I was happy to get out of Apple, happy to get out of the music business, partly because I just wasn't sure anybody would ever hire me to do anything but digital music. I was like, oh, I'm a digital music guy. Maybe I'm not capable of caring about anything else. I don't know. And so I get a call from, I'd never heard of LVMH when they called me. I'd never heard of the Arnault family when they called me. But, I went to Wikipedia and I figured it out.
But you knew how to use the internet. So,
I know how to use the internet. I'm a quick study. And I thought it was really interesting. Not only because, as you said, LVMH is bigger than the entire recorded music business in terms of, gross revenue, which is interesting when you learn about a company you've never heard of that's bigger than the entire industry that you're in. Like if your eyebrows don't go up and you're not curious, then I don't know what's wrong with you. So that happened to me, but also there was something to me, what they did fit both with my values and what I believe about the physics of the internet. So on a value side, like the investment thesis of LVMH is we back creativity with operational efficiency. I just love that. Like, I like that. The fact that you can become one of the richest people on the planet with that investment thesis gives me like hope in humanity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes me, I would feel good getting out of bed every morning if that was my investment thesis. But the other was, I fundamentally believe that the internet moves us from mass market to niche market, right? Again, it moves us from the shopping mall to Discord ultimately. And I also believe that it moves us from a world where, marketing is hyper efficient to a world where quality is hyper efficient. And I didn't make that up. I stole both of those things from somebody else. So quality to, or marketing to quality came from a guy named Umair Haq, who wrote a piece back in 2004 called The Blockbuster versus the Snowball. And what he was pointing out, and I've said this many times, but, so I apologize if anyone, including you, are hearing me repeat myself. But if you and I are making a new movie in the old world, we're not trying to make Citizen Kane. We're trying to get people to go to theater A instead of theater B, right? Because it was limited distribution. There's only so many movies at the theater on the weekend, right? So on some level, we don't care if it's a great film if we get your butt in the seat. And so if we've got an extra $2 million, do we spend that money making the movie better or putting, the actor's face on the cups at McDonald's, right? Like you spend that money. Marketing is hyper efficient, not quality. But in the world of the internet, where consumers have unlimited choice, it's the inverse, right? And so if we have some extra money, we're going to, look, whether it's like House of Cards or Transparent or Stranger Things or what, all of these things got traction, not because of the incredible marketing that was done about them. It was all word of mouth. And that's quality. That's where quality is hyper efficient as opposed to marketing. And, there's arguments to be made there for sure. But I think generally speaking, that's true. And when I looked at LVMH's business, what I saw was a collection of niches that are focused on quality. And I can tell you, they are genuinely focused on quality. I was sitting in the meeting when they were launching Rihanna's beauty brand.
Fenty.
And Bernard Arnault, it was like, look, I know the marketing's going to work, guys. So you don't even need to show it to me. I want to know, is the product quality? Because this thing's it's Rihanna. It's going to shoot out of a cannon no matter what the product is. But do we have a business in 15 years? That's the question. And we only have a business in 15 years if the product is super high quality. This is real. It's not bullshit at LVMH, right? Michael Burke, who's the CEO of Louis Vuitton, he says everyone in this company has taken an oath against short-term revenue. So it's a little tongue in cheek when he says it, sure, but this is real in that company. For me, coming from like technology and startup world, when they told me that like they take a 100-year time horizon on their brands, I laughed. Yeah. I was like, come on, man. And they're like, no, we're serious.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, wow. Okay. That is, that's commitment to quality. And I was like, this works online. I know this works on the internet, guys. Like, you haven't really invested here, but focusing on quality and creativity in niches works. And they know that the way that you grow that company is not to double the size of Louis Vuitton. It's to buy Rimowa and grow it, and to do that, across, many other brands. You grow breadth, not vertical. So anyway, that's and what I realized, and the good news for me at LVMH was that my experience in music, kind of applied to culture generally, right? It was like, oh, cool. I actually am a student of how the internet is changing culture, and not just a student of how the internet is changing music. And so I found my way there.
I want to dive a little deeper on both your time, maybe at Apple and then at LVMH, and then we'll fully go to Ledger. So on the music side, I've become really interested in this sort of history of streaming, and I'm at the beginning of my journey of being a student of all that. But like, I recently learned that Spotify isn't profitable and really has these like fixed revenue models because of their negotiations with Columbia, like all these big music studios. That means like they don't have a clear path to profitability, unlike an Amazon, for example, who wasn't profitable but was able to get there. So I'm curious, like, you moved to Apple Music or really led Apple Music, like the transition, is my understanding, from like an iTunes to an Apple Music. Apple moved to streaming. Was it in 2014 or so? Do I have that right?
They bought us in 2014. We launched Apple Music in 2015.
Can you contextualize like the environment at that time? Because so Spotify had launched in 2011, was going really well, or it was doing very well. Do you think 3 years time for them to like start this move to streaming was like a long time? Like, were they slow to adapt to the new environment? Or are you like, no, this was a massive company, they actually moved very quickly given what a big company they are?
No, first of all, I think Spotify started in 2009.
2006, but they didn't come to the US until 2011.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. Let's look at it this way. I think, what's interesting is that, the music business was growing like crazy up until 2000 to, the 2000 time zone when you had Napster and you had Kazaa and LimeWire and all these peer-to-peer things, and it really like punctured the balloon and punctured their business model balloon. But still, recorded music was a relatively small business. And, it's interesting, like people have so many misconceptions about the music business because it's such a hit-driven business, and what they see is superstars, and that makes it feel huge. But there are lots of ways that it's both small and very long tail. So, I think, so if you go with the history of the music business, you go back into the 70s when things were huge, but they weren't that big. The average person wasn't buying a lot of music. It was still a relatively niche industry, but compact discs really like allowed the music industry to grow, but it also made the music business kind of unhealthy because they became, as soon as the music business went from being sold in like little record stores, like mom and pop record stores, to being sold at Walmart, Best Buy, et cetera, it became much bigger, but also like much more about, artists like Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys that you might buy at the checkout at, Best Buy or Walmart, than about kind of like the music business that we kind of feel is this like, the music business that we want to save and preserve and
that would have also been MTV, right? Also exploded that, like, then it becomes about the dancing and Britney and Madonna.
Throughout the 80s and 90s, MTV was a huge driver of this sort of hit-driven music business. You already had a hit-driven business because of radio, and then MTV really like push that to the max. You had the confluence of things because you had MTV compact discs, which were like, a very durable, piece of thing that you could like put in a Discman, and you had distribution through like Walmart, Best Buy, et cetera. But so that's why the music business, I mean, you look at the chart of music business growth, like the 90s are just explosive. And then it falls off a cliff in 2000. So then what you realize is like, and a lot of artists I talked to at the time, the chief of which, Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys, rest in peace, his entire thought on the music business post 2000 was couldn't happen to a nicer group of people. Like, he couldn't have cared any less because, the whole thing was kind of overinflated, to begin with. So then the question was just what comes next? And the part that's interesting here and to try to bring it back to the topic of the show, for me, the internet was a revolution of information. Crypto NFTs is a revolution of value, right? And these are quite different things. Music is primarily information, right? If you're like, what is it that we listen to? It's culture, it's information, and that got completely disrupted. It got newspapers got disrupted, and music, and the same way. Like once distribution is trivial, the distribution of information is trivial, and that kind of product that you were selling, which is kind of the noise that music makes, that's no longer scarce. So then the question was, okay, well, what's the business model behind that, and how do we support it? For me and others, including like Mark Geiger, Dave Goldberg, there were lots of us in the early 2000s who had this very unpopular notion that it would be subscription. It'd be somewhere between $5 and $10 a month, and if we could just get that to scale, that there would be a healthy kind of overall music business. And that's been both true and not true. I think that in some ways the labels have always been their own worst enemies, and they've really tried to. It's when I moved here, Universal Music Group, which is the biggest record label, is owned by a French company, Vivendi. So when I moved here to France 7 years ago, I became friendly with the people at the top of Vivendi, and my advice to them was stop squeezing Spotify. Right? If you do, you're just going to push them away from music and into things like podcasts, right? Which have a completely different, completely different cost structure. And it's what's happened because, really like everyone should be interested in growing the subscriber base of music, to be billions of people, as opposed to, trying to get another 2 percentage points out of Spotify. But it's true that, the business sucks. And I saw this, when I was at Yahoo, when I was at Beats Music. I mean, the CFO of Yahoo, when I was running Yahoo Music, told me, she was like, Ian, the problem is that the more money you make, the worse Yahoo's margin is. It's like, and they really liked a business like Yahoo News, which had 5 employees and, 90% profit margins, as opposed to a business like Yahoo Music, which had 250 employees and gave 75% of our revenue directly to record labels. Right. And that was, between record labels and publishers, that was what we had at Beats Music, Apple Music, Spotify, et cetera. You're giving the vast majority of your profits back to the record labels. And who knows what they're doing with it. It's not transparent between them and the artists generally. So you've got this, like, it's just not the value chain that I was hoping for, and back in 2000, 2001, Rob Lord and I started a new company called Media Code. And what we always talked about was a loosely coupled media value chain. And man, it's crazy. I feel like between Media Code, Topspin, like every day is Groundhog Day for me in NFT world. There's so many of these ideas that are just coming back. How do you make an ecosystem that's, more artist friendly, more loosely coupled, more decentralized, one where, like 4 or 3 big media companies don't have all the leverage, et cetera. And look, I mean, this is also why I was interested in leaving the music business. Like an oligopoly of Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon it's not a healthy industry. It's not fun. It's not exciting. To be at any of those companies, having a pissing contest with one of the 3 record labels on the other side, leave that to somebody else. I think that's where this frontier that we're participating in now, which is, driven by artists, driven by consumers, full of choice, technologically decentralized and loosely coupled. Like this feels, like a much better direction and evolution.
You mentioned Topspin earlier, which is a company you founded, and you mentioned wasn't commercially successful in that you raised more money than you ultimately sold the business for. But as a concept, it feels deeply relevant to so much that has happened, but especially what's going on in Web3. And so my understanding of Topspin is it was really a place to connect artists to fans and to allow artists to monetize their fan base more directly and go direct to fans with merchandise or whatever they might have wanted to do. What are your biggest takeaways, or what were your biggest takeaways from that business that maybe you're able to bring into this new creator economy era of Web3?
I mean, look at what Trent Reznor did with he released a record called Ghosts. I want to say it was 2008, and as a consumer, you had a multitude of options. You could download half the record for free. You could buy the whole digital album for $5. You could buy the CD for $15. You could buy the vinyl for, I think there was a $30 version, and then there was a $300 version. And he sold out of the $300 versions immediately. And then used that money to make the $300 versions for the fans. And, it really was groundbreaking because the music industry was saying you damn kids, stop stealing from us and please buy our music for 99 cents. And Trent just flipped the script and he said, hey, how big a fan are you? Show me. And some people said, I want it for free. Right. But some people are like, Trent, I'm a gigantic fan. What do you want from me? Let's go. If you got a better product, I want to buy it. And not only better, but collectible, et cetera. So now look at, I think the simplest thing that should be happening right now with, with music and NFTs. I mean, I would love it if somebody rebuilt Bandcamp and had it owned by the artists. Now that Bandcamp is owned by Epic, kudos to those guys, but let's start the clock again and have it be owned by artists. And look at what you can do on any Bandcamp page. I can stream the album for free. I can buy the digital download for $8 or whatever. I can buy the compact disc for 15. I can buy the vinyl for 30. Why not? Just whatever, if you've got 200 people that would want to buy an NFT from you, well, okay, make 100 of them and sell it for whatever the right price is. Now let that be my way that on my gallery page, I can show how much I love your band. And make that be the token that gets me into your world. Another thing that we did at Topspin with somebody who is very plugged into Web3, Mike Shinoda. Have you had Mike on the show? I
haven't, no, but I know him, and not personally, but I know his work. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it'd be great to have him on. He'd be a really fantastic guest. But I mean, Mike invented this shit. We talk about this whenever, he's too humble to say that, but if you look at the Linkin Park fan club from, 2010, it looked like a token gated community, right? You could buy, so when we would do ticket sales for Linkin Park, which we did together at Topspin, it worked like this. Day one was for annual fan club members. Day two was for monthly fan club members. Day three was for anyone who had ever bought anything from the Linkin Park online store. And day four was the public sale. Does that remind you of anything?
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Shinoda invented this shit. And that's, so you're right. I mean, it's very relevant in that way. What we have now is just better technology to do that. I'll tell you one more story about Topspin that I think is relevant. That's great. A direct to fan story, the band, the Pixies. The Pixies disappeared in whatever year it was. But they come back in, 2009, and they're like, "Hey, is anything different?" You're like, "Yeah, world's a little different now." Let's tell you about it. So what we did with the Pixies was, they had this little live EP that they wanted to sell, and we were like, "No, don't sell it. Let's give it away." And they're like, "Are you crazy?" And I'm like, "Look, we did the math for them. Like, you sell this EP, you're going to make what, $30,000. Okay." I was like, "I think we can get, 100,000 people on an email list if we give it away. You don't know who your fans are because you've been gone from the scene for 15 years. Let's rebuild your list." So we gave the EP away. I think we put 150,000 people on the mailing list in 2 months, maybe less. And then we rented our own venues. So the band rented the Troxy in London and another theater in LA, which, by the way, we almost like got sued by Ticketmaster for doing. Like, we're really playing with fire in the music business when you let a band go completely direct to their fans and you cut out the promoter and you cut out everybody else. But then the only thing we did was send an email to those 150,000 people, and we sold the tickets out, really instantly. And we had the first iPhone ticket scanner. Like, everything was kind of internal to Topspin and the bands. But to me, like, all of this, I wish I'd have had, kind of this concept of token gating in those days, right? I mean, to do all of this with just like email lists and spam filters, and it's like you were sort of doing it with one arm tied behind your back, and now you just have like such better tools, to do all of this stuff with. Even when I think about customer care, you're like, you're selling people a collectible that's like, we did David Byrne and Brian Eno, and we made these like cool little tins, but it took us forever to get them made. And so, you're dealing every day with people like, hey, where's my thing? And you're like, oh, it's coming, I promise. What if we could have just given them an NFT that they could have been trading in the meantime? Like, look, you don't want it. You don't want to wait anymore. Well, someone else wants to give you 1 ETH for it. Get rid of it if you want. It'd be so great to have those tools. So anyway, yeah, I think it's super relevant. And you bring that all the way forward. I mean, LVMH, same thing. Like, imagine, I don't know, they might, but I wouldn't do, Louis Vuitton Supreme drop the way they did it.
How'd they
anymore.
do it?
I
don't know
it. People line up at the store,
oh, yeah.
and you put your best customers in a big line in front of your store. I would sell those things. I would sell them as NFTs, and then let them trade in an open market. Like, I bought a Louis Vuitton Supreme skateboard case in that because I got no discount, by the way. But it's okay. It's appreciated in value, and I could sell it at Christie's now. But imagine if that Vuitton Supreme skate case, instead of being, locked away in storage somewhere, was an NFT and it was on the market. I don't know, maybe someone in Japan wants to give me 400 grand for it. I would have hit accept on that offer. But this is the difference. Like, when you're not yet putting these items into this like always on, always liquid, global market yet. And I think that's, there's so many things that we've done in these culture businesses that are going to be, way better and more exciting. When you have this, kind of, it's not just that it's a digital artifact. It's a digital artifact that is part of an always on marketplace, a true peer-to-peer always on marketplace.
You said LVMH kind of called you out of the blue. You're at, I guess, Apple Music at that time. You internally were wanting to maybe get out of the music business, but sort of feeling like maybe I'm pigeonholed now into music. Do you know like why LVMH honed in on you and what they thought about your background would be the right fit for them, this like luxury brand that isn't really like youth street culture from which you came?
It came through a recruiter, but I mean, I have to say, like, I'm a pretty weird choice for the job.
Yeah.
And they had, so I'll just give them credit. First of all, I'm still working with them, still consulting for LVMH. I consider them, friends, and I'm very proud to be kind of a part of that extended family. I sat and talked about NFTs with Ben Arnault in July, I think. I don't think it was June.
Is that the father or one of the sons?
The father.
Who's like 75 or something at this point, probably.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And by the way, he gets this, far more than any CEO that I've ever talked to.
If I interject, what's so amazing about that, and like what kind of I understand about LVMH is like, you have basically somebody who's a capital allocator on the order of like a Warren Buffett, like just incredible at allocating capital, coupled with this brand building ability and this ability to understand like brand equity and culture, which Buffett doesn't really have. And he would be the first to say that, right? Like he knows how to allocate capital, but he doesn't have.
He eats at McDonald's every day.
Yeah, exactly. So to have Arnaud, or I always forget, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but like have both those pieces is just
it's incredible. I honestly like. I mean, I'm still amazed. He the whole family, by the way. So I'll answer your question by sort of commenting on what you just said as well. Bernardo wrote a book once upon a time called The Creative Imperative, because he believes deeply in the power of creativity. One of my favorite things is to see Bernardo with Peter Marino. I don't know if you know who Peter Marino is. He's I don't want to get it wrong. Architect, interior designer. He designs the stores, many of the stores for LVMH. If you search for a photo of him, you'll find many pictures of Peter wearing his leather vest and his leather hat. He's significantly less tall than Bernardo, and I've known Bernardo for 7 years now, and I've never seen him in anything except a Dior suit. I've seen him in many colors of Dior suits, including purple. But never in anything but a Dior suit. And so him standing next to Peter Marino is really something else. But you can also tell, when you can tell how special that relationship is. And I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying this. I think if anything, I'm just humanizing, somebody who's at the top of the Forbes list to say this guy genuinely, creativity is where his brain lives. His wife is a concert pianist. His kids, all play piano extraordinarily well. Everything that you've seen Alexander and Frederick do around punks and apes is them, because they're in this culture. I mean, what Alex has done with Tiffany and punks is really cool and really clued in my perspective. Yeah. And it comes from his brain. It's because that's just how they move. Bernardo gave me a tour of his OpenSea page, himself. He pulls out his phone. He's like, "You want to see my collection?"
The 75-year-old.
Yes, of course I do. And it's, but that's shouldn't be surprising, because, it is surprising, but when you realize these guys they care a lot about creativity, it's where they live. Who put Kanye at the Fondation Louis Vuitton? Mr. Arnault, his wife, and Alex, once upon a time, before my time. And it's awesome. It's really, really cool. So to answer your question, I think on some level, you come with a brand, if you work at Apple, it's sort of like, how it is when you're hiring. Nobody got fired for buying IBM, right? So, you're hiring from Apple. It's like, okay, it's got this sort of he's from
seal
Apple.
Approval. Yeah.
In reality, I was only at Apple for a year. People still consider me an Apple guy. I was there for 12 months. So I don't consider myself an Apple guy, but I'm okay to take the brand. But I also think that, knowing now much more about Alex in particular and his father, Bernardo is the guy who, hired Galliano on the spot when Galliano walked into his office, no shirt, but a vest and sandals. Right. And, because he doesn't care that I have tattoos on my fingers and, and I'm a bit of a weirdo. What he sees is he's like, this guy is, is doing this thing where he's dissecting culture relative to technology, and we need that, and I find that valuable, and I love that. When I was with Mr. Arnault, within the last 60 days, he was like, I want you to keep coming in here to tell me what you see.
So cool.
So that's it. It's like, I think that those guys want me around for the same reason you want me on the show. It's and I love that. I feel, and I like that I'm still me. I still, ride a skateboard and, I do everything else I've always done. Mm-hmm. And I still get to be me, but passion can take you someplace. I feel super lucky.
COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses who need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage their treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the extremely secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasuries to expressive, flexible, multi-chain features such as global user management, global contracts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization. organization. COINSHIFT layers on powerful treasury management tools on top of the proven security of Gnosis Safe, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Messari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. In DeFi, you have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless.
MetaMask is the leading Web3 wallet to get you access to everything you need in Web3. If you're just getting started on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. And if you need to fund your MetaMask account in order to buy that NFT that you've been eyeing, well, now you can do that directly through MetaMask. Just click the blue buy button on the home screen. Personally, I'm mad that I've spent extra gas fees transferring money from Coinbase to MetaMask in order to buy NFTs. I've been using MetaMask directly, and it is so much better. You can also buy stable coins and native tokens from Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, CeeLo, and others, and you can do it directly with your debit card, your credit card, through Apple Pay or Google Pay. And there is now an improved buying experience on MetaMask Mobile. You'll only see tokens that are in your region, so it's personalized to you, and you'll get real-time quotes, so you know you're always getting the best deal. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask yet, what are you waiting for? Go try it out. You can learn more about buying cryptocurrencies with MetaMask at metamask.io/buy-crypto.
I feel like I could pick your brain for an hour on any one of your chapters of your career alone, but in the spirit of time, let's move to Ledger here. And then if we have a little extra time, I might try and go back to LVMH because I would just love to hear a little bit more tactically about what you did to bring this sort of very traditional luxury brand digital and what they're doing now with NFTs and everything. But to move to Ledger, I don't know the best place to start here. I mean, I think maybe let's start with what do you think are the biggest misconceptions or that people have around crypto security? And maybe that's sort of simultaneous to what are the biggest mistakes people make around crypto and security?
It's the good news is I think you can feel people becoming more educated. Unfortunately, a lot of that's, happening the hard way, but I mean, you can see it in the numbers, where you have communities that have value, they use Ledger, right? So that's why you see a higher concentration of Ledger in communities like Bored Apes or Proof, or when you've got, because you think about it, that's how these communities work. There's value, there's community. Inevitably, somebody gets wrecked, and then everyone's like, "Yo, get a Ledger," right? So I think it spreads that way because I really think that the founders of Ledger 7 years ago, they were just on exactly the right path. I don't know. I mean, their conviction when they had very strong conviction all the way through has often not been popular, right? They are believers in digital assets, generally, not just one digital asset. They're believers in digital assets generally, including Bitcoin, but not only Bitcoin. They're believers in the technology. They're believers that if this digital asset thing is real, then security is going to be a big problem. Because self-custody is the jam. Self-custody is the reason. If not self-custody, why crypto, right? And they've always kind of stayed on that course. They've said, we believe in digital assets. We believe self-custody is a new freedom and a new right. And because of that, security is paramount. And I think that part of it is just being on the right side of history. Right? There have been so many people along the way who have been willing to compromise on either security or self-custody for whatever reason they made up in their head was an okay one. And Ledger has said, no, we're never going to compromise on security and self-custody, period, because we think that these things, we're in for the long term, and we think over the long term, these things are going to matter. So I think the biggest misconceptions are that, phone security is good enough. It's good enough, and if you don't have like an iOS app, how are you going to get to scale?
So that's the question I wanted to ask you on the self-custody front. Do you think it's a limiting factor? Because we hear so much about this won't go mainstream because seed phrases are a pain. And I'm sympathetic to that view, I have to say. So if you disagree, persuade me otherwise.
Well, to me, it's like saying, I've just heard this a million times, right? I'm old. As we've discussed, and I just remember really well the people in 1999 that were like, this internet's never going to scale. Everyone's never going to have broadband. And, I mean, remember that, like, when the iPhone came out, Apple stock went down, not up, because everyone's never going to pay $500 for a smartphone, right? Yeah, they were right. Everyone's not going to pay $500 for a smartphone. They're going to pay $1,200 for a smartphone, right? And it's the same thing here. Like, you can get, the best security on the planet for $80. So I don't see hardware wallets as a barrier at all. Right. I mean, you tell me you're going to buy a $1,200 smartphone and you won't spend $80 to make it secure. Oh, come on. And, and over time, in every industrial transformation, you have an unbundling and a rebundling, right? Where is, I was looking for my Nano. It's here.
Oh, I think I had mine close to me too.
This is the unbundling, right? The
unbundling is that my hardware device, my security device is separate from my phone.
Yeah. And ultimately there will be a rebundling.
Or it'll be one.
But this device is incapable of protecting digital assets.
If you're listening to this, you're showing your iPhone. Your iPhone is incapable of protecting your digital assets.
Exactly. And so your iPhone, your phone or your computer is technically incapable of protecting your wealth. Someday it will be.
So right? That's a huge point in my opinion, because right now there's a lot, obviously we talk about this ad nauseum in this community, that's like really clunky about the NFT digital asset experience. And I would say including Ledger, right? Like I was like in honor of this interview, I was like, oh, I should probably, every couple of months or whatever, I do my transfer of stuff to Ledger. And so I was doing last night and I was like, this is a pain, like it's not just my little thing. It's also this cord, and then the cord doesn't plug directly into my Mac. So I have to have a thing that converts it so I can plug it in. Yeah, exactly. I got to have my converter with me for it. And then it's this little screen and I freak out because there's a 2-minute lag before my stuff hits the hardware wallet. And, I forgot to sign the transaction on my hardware wallet. So I'm wondering why, it's like kind of a pain. I totally believe all of that is, you guys have to do the actual work, but it's deeply surmountable. And I'm not worried in the least that that's going to become a super seamless experience.
In 1999, it was like a dial up and busy signals, and your roommate picks up the phone and you lose your internet connection and it's slow. And I mean, I had an AT&T executive tell me in 2002 that we'll never be able to do video on the internet.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wild. I love hearing these stories because it is so reassuring, because you're like, it feels like such an inevitability in hindsight. And
yeah, if the problem is technology and user interface, you can bet that it will be solved.
But so let me say this is the unlock you've delivered for me is, so all of that, I was always like, yeah, this experience will get better. But the thing that always felt like a sticking point is this like damn 12, 24 word seed phrase that I'm like writing on this little card. Me who loses everything is like, oh my God, I can't lose this little card. Somebody could come in my house and steal it, like whatever. That felt like a bigger obstacle. And and I've heard you talk about like people have had their seed phrases stolen out of their OnePass. I'm like, oh my God, not even OnePass is safe. Are you saying that will ultimately, we will find a way to create like an operating system or something on our smartphone that will allow us to securely save that stuff? Or
it's a great question. And I think that you're right. I mean, it is the scariest part. And if you're not scared about your 24-word seed phrase, then you don't understand.
Get it.
You don't get it. Exactly. And so I think though, I would start by saying this, digital assets are a new invention. It's a new invention, a new human invention. And so what that means is we have digital scarcity, which means you have digital stuff that you might lose. And so because of that, security is paramount, period. And that's, by the way, whether it's on the, whether you're using custodian or you're doing self-custody, security is paramount, right? So your security between you and the custodian security, how secure is that place? If you don't want to trust yourself, you want to trust someone else, how secure are they? By the way, you should be worried about the enterprise security of the NFT projects you invest in. Is that NFT, are those smart contracts protected by Chrome and MetaMask, or are they protected by a Nano? And if one person in the DAO gets hit by a bus, is it over? Like, these are important questions that I don't think we've really grappled with as a community yet, because you have this new invention that we're just not like that familiar with yet. The concept of a scarce digital good that you could lose. So there's no way to escape, sort of the concern of security is my point. Like you'll never get past the concern of security when you have, I mean, we've seen Die Hard, getting $1 billion in gold bars out of a building is really difficult. Right. But getting $1 billion in ETH is pretty damn easy. Like it's as easy as getting, 1,000 in ETH actually, so therefore security will always be a challenge. I do think that the management of that will get better and better. So we're working on something right now for seed phrase backup. I shouldn't say what it is. It's an incredibly difficult problem to solve. But that's how good companies are made. You solve incredibly difficult problems extraordinarily well. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I always make the joke, like I have, the world's most futuristic money, and to secure it, I etched into a steel tablet. Like a cave person, right? But I think that is, that part's not going away. And in terms of what I mean is the ability to custody your own assets is extraordinarily powerful. The ability to write down 24 words and use them as a bookmark and cross a border with all of your wealth is incredible. Really, really, really powerful. And there are many things that we do and always will hold in self-custody, like our passport and our comic books and our records, and not all of them are extraordinary value. Like in the 80s when somebody smashed your window and stole your CD collection, it wasn't like you weren't going to pay your rent next month, but it was like heartbreaking. I mean, if somebody stole like every Tezos NFT that I'd ever collected, I'd still be able to pay my rent next month, but my heart would be broken, because I care a lot about those, even if the value of them isn't huge. But self-custody is what makes sense with those. So I think, yes, we need to make that seed phrase kind of backup much, much, much easier. And there are a few ways, of doing that. And like I said, we want to start to make that possible. But I also just think it's like, over time, the power of this technology is that, we go from, Web 1.0, which is username and password, to, Web 2.0, which is log in with Facebook, log in with Google, log in with Twitter, to Web 3.0, which is, you log in with your wallet, you log in with your assets. And, if you visit a metaverse, you take your stuff with you. And the winners are not the ones that lock you in because they own you and they own your data, but they're the ones who provide you the best experience around the stuff that you own. I think that promise is so huge that, Ledger and others will improve, that the user experience around security and self-custody. And that will, we will get there, just like we've gotten there. I remember in college, like, can you imagine if you had fiber at your house? It was just like a pipe dream. And now Elon's got satellites that will deliver you 400 megabits down anywhere. Similarly, like technology will solve this. Our approach is to never compromise on security and self-custody, but drive toward ease of use. So that's where we
two
go.
Other like maybe solves here. One that strikes me, it's borrowing it from the Web 2 world, is just insurance, right? It's not as if your bank can't get hacked or your assets couldn't be stolen from a bank physically or in other ways, right? But the reason I feel better about it is like it's FDIC insured. And I recognize the irony in being like, well, I trust the government to kind of bail out my assets in a world where we're talking about decentralization. But is that a potential route here? And the second is like biological hacks, like, my fingerprint gets better at unlocking things, or my facial recognition gets better at unlocking things. Is that another way to protect it where, it's much harder to hack through something if you need to feel my exact fingerprint?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So one at a time. I think, insurance, look, if Beyonce can insure her legs, then, we can insure our crypto. At the same time, like FDIC insurance, it wasn't there for a long time. A lot of people had to get wrecked before FDIC insurance was a thing in the US. And it's got a limit. It's got an upper bound, right? So, I would think that yes, over time, insurance certainly plays a role in this industry, but it probably does have upper limits, and, you probably hedge your losses in other, your risks in other ways, just like, everyone does. No millionaire just has $1 million in cash sitting, under a bed, right? So I think we'll have, this is the future. Your money's going to be in many places, and that'll be a way of hedging risk. And many of them will be insured in different ways, and risk will get hedged. I think biometrics are really a mistake for the foreseeable future in terms of security. It's just, I love that my ledger is useless to someone if I am dead. That is a great feature of the product. And that if I put the passcode into it 3 times wrong, it bricks. And I don't keep 24 words, in my apartment, on my person, with me when I'm traveling, et cetera, right? Like, these are security features. And, we need to, really make sure we won't compromise on security or self-custody. So you definitely won't see biometrics in our devices anytime soon.
So let me ask a couple specific practical questions. If I'm really serious about security, how many ledger devices should I have?
That's a great question. I think it's very personal, right? And it depends on exactly what you're doing, because, one thing, you might want to have, one, in a ultra secure place, not anywhere near your house or whatever that turns out to be, that has like a bag that you're planning to hold for the next 15 years. Okay. If you're that person, that makes perfect sense. And, you might want to have one that is your Mint wallet and one that is your Vault wallet for your NFTs. I think it really depends on the usage. You might want to have one for different assets, or for, just for ease of use. I talked to somebody, a friend who works with a lot of artists, and he was like, "Oh, I love Ledger. I've got 10 ledgers in front of me right now." And I was like, "Why?
Yeah.
Like, just tell me, why do you have 10 ledgers?" He was like, "Oh, because I work with lots of artists on lots of different projects. And the first thing I do when I work with an artist is I fire up a new ledger, because I don't want to intermingle, anyone's assets." It's like a way for him of kind of like just mentally keeping them separate, like convenience wise, keeping them separate, but also, minimizing the risk. If something happens to one, it doesn't happen to everybody. So I think it's really, really specific. But certainly I think you want to, in the world of NFTs, you want to at least have a Vault and a Mint wallet.
So 2 ledgers, one that connects, one that you kind of use as your, like, I'm going to actively mint something wallet, and then one that acts as your, like, this is my kind of savings wallet.
Correct. And the other thing that I would recommend doing, it's not necessary if you've got the 24 words in a safe place, but I find it convenient to have a backup of each as well. So you set up a second device with the same seed phrase. And now, like, if something happens, you run it through and we've seen everything, like you run it through the washing machine. Sometimes it survives that, sometimes it doesn't. I've seen dogs, eat ledgers, If something like that happens, then, it's easy. You just grab another one and you've got, you're right in business, and there's no additional security risk by having 2.
Mm-hmm.
Some people tell me, they're like, "Oh, I would never carry it. I'd be afraid of losing it." Like,
it's okay to lose it. I think that's this misconception, is people don't realize the assets are not in the ledger. They're on the blockchain. The ledger is just your key to get to those assets on the blockchain.
Exactly. And with Ledger, you can, it's funny because even someone who was new to the company, they were like, "Ian, I found your ledger, and I left it in a conference room." And I was like, "Oh, just throw it on my desk." Right. And I came in the next day and she was like, "The product's really secure, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "'Cause you weren't stressed at all. Like, you lost your ledger and you weren't stressed." I was like, "No, I wasn't stressed. I didn't even think about it. I slept fine."
Yeah.
And like, I think that is something that people don't realize. So, really, if you're afraid of losing it, well, just have 5 set up with the same seed phrase and carry it around with you. If you lose it, okay, well, you lost it.
Do you keep any assets in a MetaMask wallet?
I don't. That's not true. I do have one. I have one wallet that I will occasionally use to do listings from, just because I won't list anything from any of my real wallets. Like, I won't list anything on OpenSea from any of my real wallets. So I actually don't sell that often.
Yeah.
But if I
do,
when
I do, I sell with MetaMask.
I do it from a burner. I could do it from a burner ledger too, like more of like the Mint wallet. but I just don't. So I do have one MetaMask thing that I'll like put something in if I'm just going to, try to sell it.
Because I think my big thing is for assets that I know I'm holding for a long time, which like you is the vast majority of them. I'm like, okay, no brainer. I'll put them in Ledger, but it is kind of a pain to be like trying to do like the MetaMask Ledger integration, and I'm trying to transfer between wallets or sell something like, when I just want to quick make a sale, for example, because a floor price is pumping, like that's where I feel like it's more of a pain.
Yeah, I personally don't find it. I mean, I punch in the passcode and do the approve, and it's for me. There's two major usability points, and one is we already talked about the seed phrase, and there's two big hurdles there. One, I've got to conceptually understand it, and two, I have to go through the flow, right? So, I've got to punch back in every word, and that's it's a little time consuming, but also the cognitive load is high. And the other is that connection to Web3, and that's why we're working on Ledger Connect, because I think that kind of cross-chain connection to Web3 that throws alerts when things don't look right, like that's a really, really, really big problem. So, for me, that's why like the Mint wallet connected to MetaMask, last summer we had a huge problem with MetaMask. That's been fixed. We announced at ECC this year that we're, now that MetaMask Mobile will now support Ledger. You've got good options with Coinbase Wallet. So Ledger Live, MetaMask, Coinbase Wallet, Phantom Wallet, you've got lots of great support for Ledger. I really don't think there's a good reason, not to be using a hardware wallet at all times. Because if from a user experience perspective, it's punch in your passcode and hit and approve. That, so I think to me, the far superior additional security outweighs that additional, going through. I mean, look, last week there were 2 0 days patched on iOS and another 0-day hack patched on Chrome. We're nowhere close to these platforms being secure enough to store digital value. Yeah. Nowhere close. Yeah. And anyone, I always say this, but if I highly recommend everyone to read This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. If you're not properly paranoid, that book will do it to you. It's extraordinary, extremely well written. Our moms could read it and enjoy it. And it gives you a very kind of accurate picture of where we are with respect to cybercrime and security. But, look, we're going to be able to say this year was the biggest year for cybercrime every year for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's true. And we're moving into a world where, to me, there's just no question that, 15 years from now, when I travel from France to the US, I won't be giving them a piece of paper that shows my identity. Right. I will be a verifiable credential. I'll be proving to them that I am the owner of the wallet that contains that document. Come on, like look at what we did through COVID.
Absolutely.
Like all these papers we filled out, like, I don't know if COVID.
Well, also the absurdity of just even the vaccine card. That's the most forgeable thing ever. I'm like, I took a picture of a card and I'm now into all these restaurants. I'm like, do you actually even care? No, I didn't. What was the UK one?
God. It looked like I was picturing that like my daughter was in nursery school and she'd gone to like station 1 to play with, one game, and like station 2, she went like, station 1, she shot the water in the clown's mouth. Station 2, she like fished for goldfish. And station 3, she bowled and like got the 3 stamps. That's what it looked like. It really looked like, but this is my point. Like, like I was saying, like, at NFT NYC, the technology I used to get into AidFest. Yeah, was better than the technology I used to get into the country. Yeah.
That is wild.
That won't last forever. You know what I mean? That gap gets closed over time.
Yeah. When you think about for Ledger, like growth and you talk about these communities like Proof or Bored Apes or whatever that are probably have a much higher saturation or penetration of Ledger in their communities. Like, is your target right now just reaching more people who hold digital assets? Or are you guys like, wow, our penetration for digital asset holders is pretty good. Like, we need to be in the fight of just like getting more people digital assets to grow sales.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I really think, I don't think we need to bring people into the world of digital assets as Ledger. I think that's going to happen very naturally because there's a lot of real value for people. I mean, there will be, and I think we'll participate in that, because as we do things like the Ledger card, the Ledger credit card, which allows you to live a bankless life, once you've got that kind of full loop where, oh, look, I can get paid into my Ledger and I can buy things in my Ledger card. Well, that'll definitely bring people into the space. But I think generally people are going to come in because, they're either curious about assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and people like BFF will do the work of introducing, new people to the space. People come in because of things they're passionate about, their favorite artist, their favorite brand. They become curious about generative art, whatever it is. There are a lot of different things that are going to draw people into the space. I don't really think that that's our job. I think our job is to be there when they get there. Mm-hmm. Ideally to be the best on-ramp. I'm super happy if somebody walks into a Best Buy. We're at all the Best Buy stores in America now. They walk into a Best Buy and they're like, I don't know anything about this digital asset world, but I've heard about this company. I think it's a good brand. My friend told me it's great. It's $80. I'm in. Like I would love to be a gateway in that way, but I think the opportunity is still huge. Hundreds of millions of people hold digital assets. Tens of millions of people use MetaMask every month. We've sold 5 million ledgers. We got to close that gap. Yeah. So we get these like decent concentrations in groups like Bored Apes or Proof because there's a lot of value and there's a tight knit community and word travels fast within those little communities. But then you look at a community like BFF and, our penetration in that community is much, much, much lower. And that tells you exactly the work that you need to do. You've got to get the kind of security education in more of those newbies up to the level of the people who are more experienced and holding more value. And that's why we spend so much time and energy on education. And, Ledger Academy is, I think, number 2 behind Binance in terms of being like an educational resource for the crypto community. And, it's great for us because educated people become Ledger customers. So I don't have to try to sell you Ledger. I can just teach you about security and you're going to be like, I should get a Ledger.
Yeah.
It's great. So yeah, I think it's, I think that's our role.
Y'all put out some great videos. I know you personally do where you have, like a friend call you and, ask a security question and you'll answer the security question. To close here, I want to talk about what's coming down the pike for Ledger. I know there's some cool things you have coming up. An upcoming brick drop. I'd love for you to tease that out. I saw some of like the trailer videos for that on your YouTube as well.
Man, this is where I always wonder, like, does it mean too much to me to mean anything to other people? Because if you were an artist, a musical artist, and you came to play me a record and I loved it, that'd be really bad news. I'd be like, I got terrible news. I like your record. I don't have mainstream taste.
Yeah.
So so the fact that I think brick is so awesome might be bad news.
Yeah.
But again, hopefully, like we're moving to a world where people around the world, appreciate. There's a critical mass of people who appreciate everything.
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, explain to folks what it is, and
Yeah. So what we've done is this. So we launched Ledger Market back in July. Ledger Market is the first time we've really been able to connect what Ledger does end to end. Because, for a long time, we sell Ledger Enterprise to banks and governments and exchanges. And then we sell, end users Ledger devices, right? But this is like what you have is in the world of NFTs, you have new people coming into the space who need to go from 0 to 1, whether it's an LVMH or a Caring or it's a brick, right? And I'll tell you what brick is in a second. But like I said, I think probably, if you surveyed the NFT projects that you know and love, their enterprise security is probably pretty bad, right? A lot of them are probably running without hardware security. And some of them, like best case scenario, are running on a Nano, which has great security, but no governance. Right. So if, the principal person in that NFT project or DAO, dies or loses their seed phrase or whatever, like the contracts might fall into the wrong hands, and so, one is whether you're a newcomer to the space, like a brand, like an LVMH or a Caring or whomever, or you're more of a DIY project or a DAO, you need enterprise security. The moment you're not an individual, but you're a group, you need enterprise security. So we've had to kind of adapt our enterprise security to not just be for banks and governments and these guys, but to really also be for a brand or an individual, or a project like Deadfellas, Atom Bomb Squad, et cetera, that sort of thing. And then the other thing that we've done is, a lot of people, they need help getting to market. They've got to get from 0 to 1. They have 0 digital assets. They know they're going to have a lot more in the future. How do I get there? So that's the next step. And then they want to like go to consumers, and then the consumers also need security. So Ledger Market allows us to do that whole thing. Hey, we're going to help you have great enterprise security. We're going to help you get to market. And then we're going to help educate your end users on security so they don't get wrecked. So it's a really nice kind of end-to-end thing. So Brick, man, I don't think, I guess I'm not sure what all has been announced, but I'll just tell you everything and hopefully it's okay. Brick is started by the guys from Trash Talk, an incredible rock band from, I don't know if it's even accurate to call them a rock band, an incredible band from Sacramento. And these guys have created they've created worlds in their like career. It's what they do. They use the worlds that we grew up in, these like punk rock collectives, right, as the design. And like if you go to Babylon in Los Angeles, there's an incredible skate bowl there, plus a little shop that'll remind you of a Supreme, or X Large back in the day, or even like an incredible bookstore, skate shop, streetwear shop. It's like, this is, it's hard to even describe, because what they're really doing is they're purveyors of culture. And Babylon has become a community center in Los Angeles. You go there, you'll find kids, probably not just kids, you find people of all walks of life. They were telling me there's a guy there who has long dreadlocks and skates with his grandson. At Babylon. It's like literally a community center. And so what they're doing is they're building a venue, and we're all going to be owners in that venue. You are literally buying a brick in, a future kind of token gated community space. We should check on the timing of. Okay,
we can check on the timing. I'll make sure we don't completely screw you over. But that's so cool. So when you say we all, can you connect? Is this I'm going to buy an NFT and it's launched by Ledger, or it's by owning a Ledger I automatically am in
So by
something?
owning a Ledger Market Pass. So by owning a Ledger Market Pass, you'll have access to the mint, and then, I think that, if all the Ledger Market Pass owners don't buy one, I think there will be a public mint. I actually don't know the exact, mechanics, but the owners will be owners of the venue.
Wow. And then do you get like special access to the venue then, or is it
access to the venue? You get voting rights, I've talked to, I think it's next week that we're releasing the interview that I did with Lee, who is the mastermind behind this. What a guy, man. And these are what I love about this is I'm seeing the bridge between, like, these are not like crypto bros, right? Yeah. These guys are the real fucking thing. They are people who have, toured the world in a shitty van, and and they're in it for the right reasons. What means something to me. There's no such thing as the right reasons, but for me, as somebody who grew up with punk rock and skateboarding, they're in it for the right reasons. And what they really want is to create a community space that is owned by the people who frequent it, and by the people who want to be associated with it. Like, I don't think it's any kind of secret that, even though I live in Paris and won't be visiting it often, they're playing a bit on the fact that I'm an old punk rocker and would like to be associated with such a thing. Right. And that's fine. That's fine with me. I'm happy to be, we do this kind of thing all the time with public radio and politics. And, there's always ways of, or Kickstarter or Patreon or Substack, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's not so different from these types of things where you crowdsource, you crowdfund, but now you've got this new tool in your quiver. The new tool is kind of ownership that's transferable, and ownership that, allows me to vote. And then, so I think that, again, that's why I love it, because it's not futuristic. It's not totally new. It's not a 3D metaverse. It's, it's a community center, which is about art and education. And, we can all be both patrons and owners.
What's the play from Ledger's perspective? Is it like brand equity, like trying to show the kind of brand you are through this partnership? What's the goal for Ledger in this, in working with them on this?
It's a great question because, and it's kind of my fear in a way. Like, I think some people will be as passionate about Brick as I am, and some people will be like, I don't get it and I don't care, which, by the way, is fine. We have many things lined up for Ledger Market Pass owners. The real thing for Ledger is we want to show people that you can have security end to end, and it's important. So security on the project side, a go-to-market that doesn't screw your customers that are interested. That's not, bots, gas wars, et cetera, which is why we partner with Premint and continue to do that. And we also care about, the provenance and who owns the contract and who's audited the contract, and these sorts of things that are important, but also often get overlooked. And then we want there to be education about security and self-custody for the end user. So for us, Ledger Market is really just a vehicle to show how
to put into practice everything that you're kind of preaching, so to speak.
Exactly. And actually, one more thing, we also want to create something where by being a Ledger owner, a Ledger holder, a Ledger customer, you get value. So right now it's Ledger Market Pass, but ultimately, we want every person who buys a Ledger to have an opportunity to be involved in these kind of raffles. So, look, maybe for the broader audiences, the chance of getting selected in a raffle is much lower than if you're a Market Pass holder. But still, I would love it if, oh man, how did you get in that? Like, really hard to get in Mint. Oh, I won the Ledger raffle. Dude, that's so cool. So obviously it's not something, scarcity is scarcity. You can't give it to everybody. But I really want to find ways that, by being a Ledger customer, you get additional value.
Final piece. I think there are other like Ledger Pro Team collaborations coming up. I think of you guys as like prolific collaborators. Like, I feel like every project that I like follow or I'm interested in has like done cool things with you guys or given away ledgers to their community, et cetera. But what else do you have on the horizon from like a, collaboration perspective that you can maybe share with us here?
Oh man, there's a good one, but I don't think I'm allowed to say it.
Can you give us a hint?
Well, we've at Ledger Open in New York, we announced a number of partnerships. We announced, that we've created kind of this pro team, which for me comes from being a skateboarder. And, if you haven't watched the Bones Brigade documentary, watch it, and then you'll know what it is I'm trying to create in terms of a pro team. But on that pro team are people like Bobby Hundreds, Betty and Syke at Deadfellas, Dan Held, Mike Shinoda. So these are the types of people that, we're really stoked to work with. And it's all over. Dan's really, a Bitcoin guy. And, that's a super important community. For me, Bitcoin is still the main event. So having Dan, with us and we continue to sponsor what Bitcoin did with Peter McCormick. And, so we want to, be meaningful in these communities. I guess, for me, there isn't such a thing as crypto. Crypto is a collection of communities. And, what I know from being a skateboarder is when a brand walks in and does something lame, you know it, you smell it, and like my friend and artist, Jeff McFetridge, he talks about this concept of kind of cultural generosity. When you go into a community, you want to bring value to the community. You want if I come to your house, I don't take something home with me. I bring you a bottle of champagne.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do with these communities. So I think, that's what we try to do. And the nice thing for us is like, we can bring education. I don't have to spend a lot of money to bring you education, but I can give you a lot of value. And, Bobby Hundreds is the one who said to me, he's like, man, when you guys come in to the Atom Bomb Squad community, it doesn't feel like you're selling. Like, people are really thankful that you came in and you helped them.
Educated.
You educated. And that's, so I think, I can't really say. We have so much coming. I've got like amazing products, services. And this is a trick I learned at Apple, which is, you kind of pop your head out and talk twice a year.
Yeah.
So we did we did Ledger Open in New York in June, and we're going to do Ledger Open here in Paris in December 5th. I don't think we've sent out the save the dates yet, but that is the date. You can save the date. Please come. Carly, will you come?
Oh my God, Paris? I mean, twist my arm. December 5th?
So December 5th in Paris, and we'll have a whole raft of announcements then. And between them, we'll be doing Ledger market drops. The good news is we get the brick drop coming soon, and then the next one is coming pretty soon thereafter. So people will start to kind of feel the direction we're going once we get a couple of them under our belt.
Okay. Well, I'm excited. I will watch with bated breath to see more announcements that come out. And Ian, thank you so much. This was a blast. Again, I wish we had like 5 hours and I could do like an hour and a half on each of the phases of your career, because I just feel like there's so many threads that tie up that are just fascinating. But really appreciate you giving us all this time. Will
you come on our podcast? I'd love to know like a summary of how long have you been doing this podcast?
Since we officially launched in November, 6-7 months.
Okay. I'd love to know like a summary of like what you've learned. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And
I thought about doing something like that, like, you know, like here are my top 5 or top 10 takeaways from having talked to all these people and, you know, haven't gotten to do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's a good idea because you're getting like such a great overview of the space. But okay, I'm going to make you come on our podcast
anytime.
And do this the other direction.
Cool. Say the word.
Reciprocity is the essence of human life.
I love it. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Ian. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.